UFP, the United Federation of Podcasts.
Stand by to receive our transmission.
You're listening to Star Trek Weekly News with Tony Robinson. In this week's news, Discovery Season 2, Episode 1 reviewed. Amazing Voyager fan series. All this and more coming right up. But of course you are expecting a review of the latest episode of Star Trek Discovery, Season 2, Episode 1, Brother. Our very own correspondent, Tony Black, has this to say. Looking back on the first season of Discovery, it was not only the strongest first season of a Star Trek show since 1966, it was also the most radical. Trek's return to television under the original auspices of Bryan Fuller, later with significant support from Alex Kurtzman after a difficult road, has now emerged as showrunner and steward of Trek's modern TV revolution on CBS All Access. It was designed as a refreshed update from the era that spanned the late 1980s through the mid-2000s. Gone were the standalone episodes, the 24/25 episode per season, even the traditional structure of network television with one eye on syndication. Discovery was living in the now. Season 1 threw a great deal at the wall. A ship and captain we didn't even see or meet until the third episode, allowing the first two episodes to serve as more of a prequel epilogue than a traditional Star Trek two-part pilot of old. Pure serialized storytelling, which contained character development and story tropes such as the time loop episode within a broader season-long arc, and in particular, the captain of the ship, the inviolate hero of all Trek series of old, turned out to be a villain of the piece. Not to mention the fact that our main character turned out not only to be of lower rank, but a mutineer to boot. Not all of it stuck, but Discovery from day one broke the Star Trek rules with a casual F-bomb dropping swagger of its own. Perhaps the most surprising aspect of Brother, therefore, is just how hard it works to feel like the Star Trek that long came before Discovery. Kurtzman as showrunner, and here writers Ted Sullivan and Aaron Harbitz and Gretchen Berg pick up from the Season 1 cliffhanger of the Discovery coming face-to-face with the legendary USS Enterprise by finding a handy solution to the problem of who will be the ship's new captain. Enter Anson Mount as Christopher Pike, the original captain of the Enterprise's 5-year mission before the days of James T. Kirk's immortalized crew, who fits the template of what everyone expects a Starfleet captain to be: male, white, square-jawed, all-American, and innately noble. "I'm not Lorca," is one of the first things he says to the crew. Discovery also tries to detach as much as possible from the complexities of the Season 1 narrative, which awkwardly veered from the mire of a Dur conflict with the Klingon Empire, the exploitation of space creatures to fuel a new propulsion system, and a pulpy period being stranded in the Mirror universe under the yoke of the fascist Terran Empire. Season 1, in retrospect, feels akin to a prequel story before the traditional Star Trek adventure begins with Brother, and a narrative kicks off which allows for exploration, mystery, a fair dose of technobabble, and the crew functioning like a crew on a streamlined story, all of which was often absent in many episodes last year. As a result, while Brother is reassuring television and will likely be very popular among Star Trek purists, It resets Discovery a little from operating as a trendsetter, pushing the franchise forward into not just uncharted space, but uncharted narrative territory. Season 1 often felt edgy and difficult, sometimes even unknowable. It takes a few watches to bed in for your expectations to adjust to the fact that this isn't your dad's Star Trek, that it's more of a fusion of J.J. Abrams' Kelvin timeline sheen and spectacle with a modern science fiction bent. Season 2, on this evidence, will be more Star Trek Beyond than Star Trek 09, to use a crude comparison. Enjoyable and entertaining, but familiar and safer. Brother also naturally is dominated by the Vulcan-sized elephant in the room that is the iconic Commander Spock, Michael Burnham's foster brother, who also, of course, is XO of Pike's dry-docked Enterprise. And the central emotional core of family and distance is arced around Burnham's difficult relationship with Spock. Though we see the character only in childhood flashbacks and hear him on a recording, Spock's presence dominates the episode like a looming shadow. If the show isn't careful, he may come to overshadow the entire season. This is where Discovery has to watch where it treads in Season 2. It's already a show built heavily on 1960s nostalgia, infused with modern storytelling sensibility in a similar manner to Abrams' rebooted movies, but introducing the Enterprise and Pike's crew only serves to increase that tenfold, especially in exploring an era of Spock's history we've never seen before. In many ways, Spock is, and always has been, Star Trek. He's the one character who could define this franchise more than any other. And Discovery now appears to be building a season of storytelling around Burnham's relationship with him. Time will tell how well this works. Brother plays nicely as an opener, setting up a plot which will allow Discovery to explore space in a way Season 1's more aggressive narrative wouldn't. Brother plays nicely as an opener, setting up a plot which allows Discovery to explore space in the way Season 1's more aggressive narrative wouldn't, with plenty of nice character beats, and a sense the ensemble is beginning to expand, but familiarity can sometimes breed contempt. Discovery hopefully can blend Star Trek storytelling we know and love with the boundaries it dared to push in its first years as it warps off into its second. That report was from Tony Black at setthetape.com. Last week, as you recall, we offered you fan theories about Voyager that do seem to make an awful lot of sense. And we continued this week with the countdown to 0, starting with Tom Paris's double offed himself. Well, the question is, why does Tom Paris's double just vanish without a trace? The obvious conclusion would be that decay had started to set in and he perished as a result, but some fans speculate that the truth is even bleaker. Since we last saw this version of Tom expressing bitterness over his situation in a pretty depressed tone, those fans think that the duplicate Tom just decided to off himself and end it quickly rather than to wait and rot. A far less likely theory? That Tom is the reincarnation of Captain Kirk. The cause of Kes's insanity. When Kes returned to the show after evolving into a higher life form, she was as bitter and unhinged as an adult who's come home to live back in Mom's basement after giddily declaring independence just 6 months ago. She even blames Janeway for filling her head with ideas of exploration, much like a petulant child. Fans just aren't buying this. Some think that the reason Kes went insane was because of some dark knowledge she gained on her travels, such as learning that the Borg had assimilated her world or coming to terms with her own mortality. Friendship 1 was intended to insult the Vulcans. When the unmanned Friendship 1 was sent out to make contact with the Vulcans, it was more than weird, given how first contact had already been made years prior. Why would another probe be sent out to re-establish this contact? Could you imagine if every space probe had some kind of follow-up visit every 4 years? Fans who find this strange say that the Friendship 1 wasn't an actual probe at all. Instead, it was meant to insult the Vulcans, who refused to share their tech with humans. the Doctor has no backup files on purpose. It would seem egregious error for there to be no backup files of the Doctor, and fans have hotly contested the reason why for a long time. Some speculate that there were no backup files intentionally because the Doctor is himself the backup, which makes some kind of perfect sense. The EMH was created for emergency use to begin with, which means that he is the backup files. You don't typically make a backup of your backup unless you're a super type A or you have way too much time in your hands. It's a lengthy process, and we can't blame anyone for not doing it twice. Janeway marries Mark. Isn't there a rule in sci-fi where you marry the person who saved your life? Mark Johnson was supposed to do just that with his love, Captain Janeway, but he married someone else once the Voyager was lost and everyone assumed the crew was gone forever. While Mark's wife Carla and Janeway eventually meet and become friends, some fans speculate that Janeway developed into the typical insane admiral and took out his wife in, say, a transporter accident. Given that Mark said he'd have waited to marry her had he known she still lived, he would then run back into her arms. Tom Paris and Harry Kim were a couple. There are several LGBT theories in the Star Trek universe, and as groundbreaking as each series was, it wasn't inclusive to LGBT people until very recently. Several Star Trek actors like George Takei, Zachary Quinto have come out publicly, but Gene Roddenberry's own prejudice, which he has since spoken out against, likely had much to do with it over the years. A favourite pairing among Voyager fans, Tom Paris and Harry Kim had a fantastic dynamic in the show that could easily be attributed to romantic love rather than friendly admiration. Quantum Leap was a part of Starfleet. Remember the time-jumping program Quantum Leap? There's a fun fan theory that Commander Braxton took over the Quantum Leap project on Earth 1999, which makes Braxton himself the reason why Sam's leaps are so random and sporadic. There are a few one-time characters that Sam meets who could serve as Braxton's presence as he observes Sam's progress and works to correct the failed project. There's really not a lot of evidence here, but it could still happen, and it would unify two very cool sci-fi universes. Ocampans use mind manipulation. There's a theory that a telepathic link that Ocampans utilize with their mates may not only create a deeper bond, but actually control or manipulate the species mates to the point of even altering their desires and personalities. While Neelix was a possessive and jealous mate to Kez, as soon as she left, his demeanour pleasantly shifted and he became a more likeable character. Still others believe this may be explained away with pheromones. Kez says that Ocampan marriages have no jealousy or distrust, which could be due to their own powers of pheromone manipulation. The Kuva Ma will find the Sword of Kahless. It's not relevant to the show all that much, but Tom and B'Elanna's child could be the star of a completely new story in which the Klingons are not only unified, but perhaps even evolved into something new. It would make sense that even a warlike race would eventually adapt and become peaceful in the show, particularly since evolving into a more peaceful, productive species that doesn't even use money, in most cases anyway, is a prime focus of Star Trek. Fans speculate that finding the Sword of Kahless would make Kahuma the leader the Klingons need to enter a new era of peace and wisdom. Everything after Year of Hell is a dream. In a complicated fan theory that actually works out quite well, the famous Year of Hell resulted in a time paradox that nullified the universe in the series, rendering every moment toward a dream. Nobody likes the "it was all a dream after all" trope, which is just lazy storytelling, but if it's true, it would explain a lot. Why is there another Doctor? What about Kez's warnings about before and after? There are lots of tiny pieces of evidence that could give credence to this idea, and if you look them up, you could fall into a wormhole yourself, wondering what's real and what was just an illusion. The Borg Queen is Seven of Nine's mother. Wouldn't it be completely fitting